All right, video 4, we're starting at what is a goal versus what is an activity. How does this affect you? Well, you're planning your lesson, you have your framework picked out, you're writing your very specific, student-friendly, clear, measurable objective. And once you've written that out using a measurable verb, you want to make sure that what you have written is actually an objective, a student learning objective, a goal for learning versus an activity statement. A goal is what I want you to learn. An activity is what I want you to do during the lesson. So let's take a look at some examples. Imagine that you look at a lesson plan that someone has written for 7th grade science. You see a framework at the top, and then you look at the objective box, and here's what the person has written is the learning objective for the day. Students will observe leaves on a nature walk through the outdoor classroom. Some questions we should ask. If I'm a student in this class, is it clear what I'm supposed to learn that day? Has this teacher written a clear learning target for me? No. I know what I'm going to do. I know I'm going to go outside and look at leaves, and I know where I'm going to do it in the outdoor classroom. But I don't know what I'm supposed to learn necessarily. I might be able to guess that this teacher wants me to identify leaves, but I don't know that based on the objective. Is it specific? It's specific about, I guess, where we're going, but it's not specific about what I'm learning. And I'll tell you also, it's not very well framework-based. Nowhere in the 7th grade science framework does it say that people should just look at leaves. This is the most important one. Is it measurable? Is it clear how I could, as the teacher or as a student, assess my learning? Not really, no. I mean, if we were literal and I was the teacher, I guess I could walk around with a clipboard and I could watch your eyes. And when you looked at some leaves, I could check off that, yep, your name is Jennifer and you are observing leaves. I checked you off. That was observation right there, but which seems ridiculous. And why would a teacher do that? Again, that's a good question. It has to do with the way the objective is written. So here's a fix. We took the old and we tried to make it better. Notice what we're changing. We're changing this verb. Students will now name and classify various types of leaves. This is much better because it is now clear what I need to learn. If you were my teacher and you said, hey, today, by the end of this lesson, you need to be able to name and classify, you might even put a number on it, 5 different types of leaves. We're going outside. We're going to look at leaves. I'm going to teach you about leaves. We're going to see actually about 10 different types of leaves. When you come in, I'm going to give you a quiz, and you need to be able to name and classify 5 of those. That's a very clear learning objective. It's very specific. It is measurable. Oh, I know, even as a student, I'm going to have to name those leaves and classify them when we come back inside. So it can be assessed. And I think that if I'm a student in this class, I'm going to understand what it is that I'm supposed to learn. I think I can see this target very, very clearly. And that's really what this whole business is about. If you feel like I'm just really going overboard on this objective business, it is important for you as a lesson planner to be sure that you have set up a goal for yourself, a student learning objective that you can follow and focus upon. And it's important for your students to know what it is that they are supposed to learn on that day without wondering, what it is that I'm supposed to be doing. Keep it all very, very clear. So now I want you to look at this idea. Let's do another one together. Students will play a game of volleyball. So imagine that you came in and you looked at a lesson plan, and this is what the person had written was the objective for the lesson. Students will play a game of volleyball. That's an activity statement. It's what the students are going to do, but it's not what they're going to learn. Could we fix this by just adding the word students will learn to play a game of volleyball? We can't. I can't teach you how to play volleyball in one lesson. Remember, you're writing a lesson plan for one class period. How could we fix this? Well, we'd have to break it down to something much more clear and something much more specific. And we'd have to use some measurable verbs. How about students will identify, there's a measurable verb, and apply, another good measurable verb, the correct rotation pattern for players in a game of volleyball. This is a world of difference away from this objective. This is very unclear. I don't even think you can teach this in 50 minutes. This can be taught in one lesson of physical education. And not only is it possible to teach it, it's framework-based. It also uses measurable verbs. If I'm a student and you were my coach and you said, hey, at the end of this lesson, you're going to have to identify and apply the rotation pattern for players on a team during a game of volleyball. Who moves where, when it becomes our serve. I could learn that. I could watch you model it. I could practice it as we play a game. And then you could give me a little quiz at the end, maybe a written quiz where I have to mark the rotation pattern. I would have to identify and apply it. That's possible. And this is the kind of objective that we want you to be able to write. Something very specific, clear, measurable, framework-based. Let's look at 3 more. Students will discuss the myths and legends of ancient Greece. Well, what's the verb? Discuss. Is that measurable? I could sit around and I could watch you talking, and I guess I could hold a roster with your names, and I could check off if you opened your mouth and talked about the myths and legends. But if this was written on the board when we walked in, and I was a student and I saw today's objective, students will discuss the myths and legends of ancient Greece, I know what I'm doing, but I don't know what I'm learning. So this is not a great example. It's an activity statement. How about students will learn the fundamental differences between plant and animal cells? Students will learn the fundamental differences between plant and animal cells. Well, if I was a student in this class, I think I'd know I got to learn the difference between plant and animal cell. The method of assessment, the measurableness is not there. It's got that learn word in it. So what could I do to fix this one? Well, I'd take out learn and I'd stick in a verb that matches what I'm going to have to do. Am I going to have to list the fundamental differences between plant and animal cells? Okay, that's kind of a remembering task. Am I going to have to explain the fundamental differences? That's more of an understanding task. Am I going to have to apply the fundamental differences? That would be a little bit farther up Bloom's taxonomy. All depends on what's happening during that lesson and what you expect me to do at the end of the lesson. Whoops. How about the last one? Students will work cooperatively to make a 3D model of the solar system. Well, this sounds fun. I can imagine a room with like glitter and glue and styrofoam balls and paint, and this sounds very hands-on and exciting. It's cooperative also. Oh, and I'm making a model of the solar system. Yay. But is that an objective? Is it a great student learning objective? It is not. I know what we're doing. I know we're making something, but I do not know what I'm supposed to learn. What am I supposed to learn about the solar system for making this model? Am I a first grader and I'm learning to name the planets? Then students will identify the planets of our solar system, period. I don't even need to mention making a model in my objective, because the objective is not about what the students are doing. It's about what we're learning. If I'm a 7th grader and I already know the names of the planets, it might be that students will be able to explain, or let's say students will identify the relative size of the planets in the solar system. Now I'm kind of making stuff up here off the top of my head, but I'm trying to help you see the difference between an activity statement about what I'm doing and a learning statement that's about what I'm supposed to learn during the lesson. So as you're writing your first lesson plan, so far, some things you're going to be careful about. You're going to go to the frameworks and you're going to pull an actual student learning expectation from the frameworks for the subject and the grade level that you want to write your lesson for. Once you have that framework, you're going to use that framework to write a clear, specific, student-friendly, measurable learning objective for that lesson. And when you're done, you're going to stop and say, all right, if I was a student in this class, would I know what it is that I'm supposed to learn? And is this an activity statement that's more about what we're doing, or is it a learning statement, an objective that's more about what I'm going to learn in the classroom on this day? And it doesn't have to have the word learn in it, but it needs measurable verbs, and you can use the Bloom's taxonomy list to help you do that. Here are some examples. Students will define DNA mutation. That's clear and specific and is measurable. Students will identify DNA mutation events. Students will compare and contrast DNA mutation events. These could be in one lesson. I might have 3 objectives for you. We're going to define it, we're going to identify it, and we're going to compare and contrast it. Or this might be 2 days. Day 1 will be define and identify. Day 2 will be compare and contrast, because these are more difficult concepts than this one. This is pretty much remembering level with Bloom's taxonomy. This one's probably more like remembering level. This is more understanding and maybe application level. Now let's go on the lesson format, and I'm going to escape for just a minute and go to the actual lesson plan to say, here's what we filled out so far. We filled out the grade level, we filled out the day and the date, we filled out the subject we're teaching, and the period. Topic, subject, I realize those seem to be the same thing, so really this really means period of the day. For our work in this class, you'll just fill out the grade level and the subject. You won't necessarily have to fill out the date or the topic or period. But if I was coming to see you at a school, then I would need to know what date am I coming and then what period am I coming with the time. That's super helpful. Framework that I pull out of the curriculum document, copy and paste it straight up into that box. Don't have to change a thing about it. I just put it in the box. I'll even go out here real fast, maybe and find one real quick. I'd go to the curriculum frameworks. And just to show you what I would do, let's do social studies. Whoops, I used the wrong ones. Those are the old ones. Here's social studies, new courses, valid July 1st, 2015. I'm going to go to social studies, grade 7. Maybe this will download quickly. All right, here we go. It's geography. These are the strands. These are the big content standards. I'm going to try to get down to something specific. Here we go. All right, so let's imagine I am teaching a lesson in which my goal is to get students to explain the relationships between places and regions using geographic representations. Now you may think, what the heck does that mean? Well, I would have to, be a content specialist, and I have to be able to look up some of those things. But when it comes to writing my lesson, then I would take all of this, and I could copy it, and I'd go to my lesson plan, and I'd paste it right there in that box. Is it going to work? Oh, that did not look good. Paste it in a way that makes it look right. I think it's because let's try that one more time. This time I'm just going to take the text from this box only and see if that will help. So I did a Control-C and then paste it in. Do we get, that's much better. But I do need those numbers. The reason I need the numbers is because if I am your supervisor, I want to know where you found this, and this is the reference that I need to go and look it up myself if I want to. So I'm going to put that in also at the beginning. That's what it should look like. From the frameworks, don't change a word of it. It's here where I have to take this and I have to turn it into an objective that's clear, framework-based, measurable, and student-friendly, because students may not know what geographic representations mean. And that's where your content specialty comes into play in using Bloom's taxonomy like we've talked about so far in the lesson. So let's move on to this box, which is the essential questions box. Essential questions are big questions. They are, when I taught 7th grade language arts, I had 10 essential questions that matched everything we did for the whole year. Did I make these up out of my head? I did not. I went to my frameworks, I found the big content standards, and I'm back on the geography document. So if I was teaching 7th grade geography, here are the content standards for the whole course. Look, there are 10 of them. I could take these and I could turn them into big questions. Like, what's the big question of the day? If you think about our driver's education lesson, what might be our essential question? Something like, what does it mean to drive safely? That's a big question. That question's so big that many of our lessons in driver's education would fit underneath that larger idea. When it comes to writing your lesson plan, for this first one, you need one essential question. And to figure out what that is, my advice for you is to back up in your content document and go to where you find the content standards and look to see, okay, well, which of these does my lesson fit under, and how can I take this idea? Students will analyze the spatial organization of people, places, and environments on our surface, and how can I turn this into a student-friendly question, an essential question? You can also Google things like geography, essential question. Look at that, it finishes itself. So people are writing these things, enduring understandings, essential questions. And let's just see what we get here. Now I'm pulling these from another school district, but it might be a great question that I can use. So here are the big understandings, and here are some questions that are already created to go along with it. Now I didn't even look at that geography document very close, but it could be that they already have the essential questions written in. I don't see them though. Looks like they didn't write them for us. So we might have to do some searching and some thinking and some crafting of some questions of our own. How does geography influence lifestyle and point of view? Do you hear how large of a question that is? There are many, many possible examples and answers to this question. In the past, it would be different than the present. So when it comes to writing your essential questions, here are some things that you're looking for. Essential questions are vital, important. They get to the heart of the matter. It's the big idea. It's the essence of the issue. A great essential question will create genuine and relevant inquiry into the core content. So there'll be lots to talk about. There'll be lots to think about. There may be new questions that will be inspired by your large essential question. There should be lots of alternatives for an essential question. There's not one answer. It's a critical thinking kind of question. Students might have to weigh evidence and support their reasoning for their answer and justify their answers. It ought to stimulate ongoing rethinking of the big idea. It might make us question our assumptions. It might make us consider and remember prior lessons that also fell underneath that umbrella. We might be able to connect with it in a meaningful way personally and with our prior learning, and it ought to naturally reoccur throughout the core content. That's why when I taught 7th grade language arts, I had those big questions up on the wall, and really on almost any day, no matter what we were doing, I could say, all right, so today we learned about pronouns maybe. And I could say, someone look at that wall, or let's look at the wall, and then I want you to all think about which of the questions we're answering with our lesson on pronouns, and somebody tell me which one you think it is. And I think one of those essential questions was, why is it important for a writer to use language accurately? That's the big question. And the pronoun lesson fit underneath that. So if someone can say, well, I think this is about accurate language use, I can say, good, why is this important? Why do we want to use the pronouns correctly? And then we could have a conversation about why that might be important for us to do. Here's some examples of some essential questions for you. What is defensive driving and why is it important? How do writers use language to create meaning for readers? From science, how are velocity and motion and force related? From social studies, how does the migration of people groups impact economies? And from mathematics, how can ratios be used to describe the relationship between two quantities? Again, large questions, and you're going to think of one. I suggest one, and you put it in the box. I'm going to stop here and begin another segment.